There is almost no disagreement between economists for the last 250 years that free trade is beneficial for all sides involved. This raises the question of why is it that interference with international trade is so widespread despite the almost unanimous professional agreement? Politicians call tariffs a protective measure. It indeed protects the consumers from one thing. It very well protects the consumer from having low prices. But even the concentrated groups that push for these restrictive measures are not able to pass them unless they make a case that is in the interest of the whole country and public in general. Tariffs, which is one form of interference, are just an alternative to try to fight and conceal devaluation. If the value of a dollar relative to Chinese yuan is decreasing, let's say today you need 16 cents to buy one Chinese yuan and tomorrow you need 50 cents to buy one Chinese yuan. It means Chinese products would be more expensive to the United States consumers and US goods would be cheaper for the Chinese consumers. This is how things would balance and fall into their place. This is the best way to deal with devaluation since one of the countries has shown higher productivity and will be rewarded. The reason tariffs are introduced is because it is politically profitable. Just like with many other things when government is involved, the interests of people who push for tariffs are concentrated while the people who are harmed by them are spread out. Each of us tends to produce one product, but we tend to buy thousands of products and services. People who produce steel have a very strong interest of having protection against competition from other countries. But none of us will go and protest in Washington for a few dollars increase in steel prices. We can't even do it for the $6 gas prices that we are seeing today. Now, the question is, why is it that economists can't persuade the public about the benefits of free trade? Especially when the argument for free trade is very simple. The argument was made by the father of economics, Adam Smith, almost 250 years ago. In every country, it always is and must be the interest of the great body of the people to buy whatever they want of those who sell it cheapest. The proposition is so very manifest that it seems ridiculous to take any pains to prove it. Nor could it have ever been called in question had not the interested sophistry of merchants and manufacturers confounded the common sense of mankind. Their interest is, in this respect, directly opposite to that of the great body of the people. The reason why economists can't persuade the public goes back to the original proposition made earlier. Each of us are very efficient in earning money but are very inefficient in spending it. This is because each of us produce one product or service and we tend to pay a great deal of attention to it. But we pay much less attention to how we spend our money on the other 1,000 products. This backwards thinking doesn't only lead to election of tariffs and interference with free trade. It also leads to errors in other areas. Think about unemployment. We act as if our objective is to create jobs. If that was the objective, we could create any number of jobs by simply digging holes and filling them up. But the fact is that we want productive jobs, jobs that create value. And the real objective would be to have the least possible number of jobs that would bring the highest value. We work to live and not the other way around. This backwards thinking shows up in the international trade arena as well. We are always taught that exports are good and imports are bad, that it's better to sell than to buy. But any goods that are exported are not available to us. On the other hand, imports provide us with cars, foods, and other services that wouldn't have been available in such variety otherwise. In fact, having the highest possible number of imports and lowest possible number of exports is what a country should strive for. What about the argument that we need to protect the expensive American worker from competition of an Indian or Asian worker who is willing to work for cheaper? What is wrong with this argument? Well, let's imagine that the Chinese could undersell us in everything. Clothing, foods, technology, cars, we would rush to buy them. and the Chinese sellers would be paid with dollars. What would they do with them? If they decide to burn all those dollars, that would be the best case of all. After all, there is nothing we can produce cheaper than pieces of paper. But they didn't provide goods to receive pieces of paper. They are expecting goods and services in return. But since nothing in US is cheaper, those Chinese sellers will want to convert their dollars into yuan. $1 today can buy around 6 yuan, but nobody would want to sell yuan since Chinese goods are cheaper and they can just use yuan to buy those Chinese goods. So instead of selling 6 yuan for $1, they would agree to sell 3 yuan for $1 or 2 yuan for $1, and the price of the yuan would keep going up until the Chinese goods are no longer cheaper for Americans. Now, the more dollars you get for each yuan, the cheaper the American goods are to the Chinese. This is of course oversimplified picture, since some of those dollars will be spent in other countries, and other countries would accept them not because they want pieces of paper, but because they want US goods too. Foreign investments complicate the picture even more, but at the end of the day, as long as we have free exchange rates that update every second, we will not have a balance of payments problem. Now, let's look at it from a different perspective. What if American worker was twice as productive as a Chinese worker, meaning his salary can buy him a basket of goods twice as big? This means that we should only use the American worker and the things that he can produce at least 2 times more efficiently. We should only focus on producing things that we produce more efficiently and outsource the rest. For example, if a surgeon is 1.5 times better than the assistant at cleaning surgical tools but 10 times better at being a surgeon, he or she should focus on being a surgeon and not an assistant. There is an argument of preserving the steel industry at home for national defense. If that was true, we could just stockpile steel. It's the easiest thing to stockpile. Why keep producing and paying high prices for steel at home if we could get it cheaper from abroad? What about the argument that the dollar is weakening abroad? Well, it is not a problem that gets solved with international tariffs or quotas. The market will set its price through free exchange rates, and all we must do is focus on being more productive at home and stop the policy of printing money and producing inflation, which not only weakens the dollar abroad, but is also the real tax on the American people at home. I have made a video on explaining why and how exactly inflation is a tax, link in the description below. Now, what if we set free trade policies but other countries don't? Well, if China imposes tariffs on the United States, first of all, it hurts the Chinese people, but there is no doubt that it also hurts us. But if we impose tariffs on them in return, we are hurting them but also ourselves. How can you justify harming yourself just so you can also harm somebody else? United States should act as the great country which it is, and instead of reacting to what other countries do, slowly over a number of years reduce the number of tariffs on imports and subsidies for exports to 0. We can't do it overnight, since people have made plans and investments based on the current situation. But over some number of years, we could achieve no interference in the international trade. The chances of having free trade are very slim, and we have prospered despite all the trade restrictions. But by knowing the correct practice, we might, over time, move in the right direction. This will not only add to the prosperity of the United States and the whole world, but also to the peace around the world. I hope you are having a nice day. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos, and keep in mind, all this talk about trade wars is just terrifying.